panel today is going to be on neurodiversity and navigating the workplace. I'll do very brief name and affiliation introductions, and then speakers, if you want to just say a little bit more about your background and what brought you here today. So we've got Aurelia and Angus from Google. Aurelia, Angus, we're the neurodiversity leads in Ireland and London, UK, respectively. And we've got Elle and Hannah from BBC as part of the Enigma group. Thank you all for joining us. We've got Deborah from Neurobox. And we've got Jemima from Wilcox Collective, who's part of our hackathon too. So, yeah, short introduction, but I don't like putting, people should be able to tell their own story. Starting this way, would you like to just do a quick hello, and then we'll kind of jump right into things.
So yeah, hi, I'm Hannah, I'm at BBC Studios. I'm a sustainability advisor, but I am also a member of Enigma, which is our neurodiversity group that works across BBC and BBC Studios. So BBC is a bit wider. Is that one? Yeah. Cool. There's multiple parts of the BBC basically, and we're in the commercial arm, but we work across the BBC when it comes to neurodiversity and inclusion. So I have ADHD. I was self-diagnosed after an Instagram post, very millennial, but yeah, my whole journey started from an Instagram post. But yeah, I self-diagnosed 2 years ago, and then after an extremely prolonged official diagnosis was diagnosed last summer. I'm happy to talk about diagnosis procedures with anyone, so it's really complicated and hard to navigate. So yeah, really new to my understanding of my neurodiversity and how that's affected my kind of 10-year career, given I was diagnosed at 31, and that's kind of where I'll be talking from today.
Hello? Yes, we've got to actually talk into it. Hi everyone, I'm Elle. I work in the global marketing team across factual programming at BBC Studios. And I actually just want to thank the young man in the corner for raising his concerns. I thought I was very brave and really, really appreciate you doing that. It is very much test and learn, and I think neurodiversity is a relatively, it's existed for a long time, but it is a relatively new term, and people are learning, and it's amazing that Tyler is kind of leading in this space and really putting his best efforts into trying to make it happen and put this event on. So I'm dyslexic, and I have poor phonological development and visual processing disorder. So I really struggle with my short-term memory. I'm like Dory from Finding Nemo. And I got diagnosed in my second year of A-level, so I went through kind of all of school without knowing and without any kind of help. So yeah, that's the angle that I'll be speaking from today. And I'm also the dyslexic comms lead for Enigma, which is quite ironic in itself, but yeah.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Deborah Leveroy. I work for an organisation called Neurobox. I'll talk a little bit about what we do in a minute, but I've been researching and working in the field since 2009 when I started my PhD. My PhD was in dyslexia, specifically in the context of the creative industries and actor training. And I started my PhD because I had personal experience. That was kind of my initial motivation for going down this pathway as a dyslexic and dyspraxic learner. And that really kind of just sparked my interest in this and caused me to 100% sort of pivot into exploring this area more. And since then I've been working in kind of more, if you like, corporate field than creative, but I hope that I bring my kind of creative background into my current role. Thanks.
Hi everyone, so my name is Aurelia. Like Tyler said, I'm the Neurodiversity lead for Google in Ireland, alongside my colleague here, Angus, who works in the UK. So myself, I was diagnosed autistic when I was 33, and I also have dyscalculia, but I don't need confirmation that I can't count, so I'm just going to leave that for now. I have been working at Google for 2 years plus, and we cover scope like HR, benefits, accommodations, and helping advocate for the needs of the neurodivergent community within Google and more globally as well in our local charities and groups as well.
Hi, I'm Angus. I've been with Google for 6.5 years now. I sit in our staffing and people operations team, predominantly looking after Google Cloud. I have epilepsy and dyslexia. I know epilepsy is one of the ones that flies under the radar when we talk about neurodiversity, but I think there's a whole spectrum there that needs to be considered. So yeah, mine were diagnosed at school, so I've had it for a very long time now, so feel comfortable in terms of dealing with it. So yeah.
Good morning, you beautiful humans. My name is Jemima. I'm the co-founder of the Neurobox Collective, the Neurospicy Entrepreneur, and XW3D. The Neurobox Collective are adventurers on the quest to deliver authentic, personality-driven visual content for organisations like ThinkLab and other corporate entities. We create, I can never get this right, so please forgive me. Eye-catching, scroll-stopping, tongue-wagging, light-clapping, link-clicking, comic-leaving, crowd-pleasing content with feeling. I am a proud neurospicy. I use the word neurospicy to describe the intersectionality of my personality and my life experiences. I've always been known and wired differently, and I was diagnosed as being dyslexic at university. And I've just recently begun my ADHD diagnosis. So I have first-hand experience with these things. From these experiences, I've also created the Neurospicy Entrepreneur Club, which is an award-winning community that champions neurodivergent entrepreneurs by giving them a place to belong. In addition to this as well, because I can't be that busy, I have also created with my husband XW3D. We 3D print things you didn't know you wanted, specifically tactile, brightly coloured fidget toys.
Thank you, everyone. So this is a great panel. A lot of breadth of experience here. Aurelia, because you win the award of furthest travel from Dublin to get here, would you like to start us off, followed by Angus? And I wanted to ask you specifically, actually, we can fill everyone. Yes. That's better. Oh, the mic. Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go over this a little bit. We will have time for questions. We want to make sure this is nice and interactive. How is this volume, by the way? Good? Okay, thank you. Aurelia, first question for you. Based on your experience at Google and your work with neurodivergent communities, what are some of the most pressing challenges that neurodivergent individuals are currently grappling with in the workplace, especially in tech?
Great question. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is not specific to tech, right? We don't have challenges, I would say, that are specific to technology, but we do have some that are ironic in nature. For example, the challenge of inaccessible technology, which working at Google, we love to say we create a lot of accessible technology, but we also use some that are created by others, like the bionic fonts. I mean, some of you may know this, which is not a Google product, of course. But in any case, I think one of the most pressing challenges is going to be disclosure or lack thereof in the workplace. So people will not talk about being neurodivergent. They don't want to talk about it because they're afraid it's going to hinder their career. People are going to think they're less capable, that they can't do the job they've been hired for, and a lot of the times they actually hide their diagnosis if they have one, or any type of self-diagnosis even during the interview process, even though we have accommodations for that as well. I know that was my case, and I decided to disclose the first week I started because I thought, now you've hired me, so that's too late. That worked out well, actually. But in any case, what we're trying to do is sort of address that as well, and it starts with creating a psychologically safe space, right? And all of that is going to be obtained by working on accommodations process being very easy and literally accessible, because you would be surprised the amount of processes to request an accommodation that is inaccessible. Like, the irony of that is genuinely preposterous. Upskilling managers is going to be one of them as well. So, we have awareness sessions and we have trainings and workshops, but you can only go so far with awareness, which is why we're trying to remove the word awareness and replace it with acceptance. I actually heard that from one of my colleagues at IBM, who's the Neurodiversity lead, who said, would you say something like Women Awareness Month? You wouldn't say that, right? So we have to really have a shift, a little bit of mindset about the fact that you don't need to be aware of us because we're already here, so that doesn't really matter. So you just have to accept, educate yourself, and also we try to make people understand that the burden of education doesn't always fall on the disabled person, right? It's about people being alive, educating themselves on how they can support, and the best thing that we put forth is actually when someone tells you something that they need, you should just believe them. You shouldn't say, why do you need this? How do you need that? Just believe whatever they they need, and they don't have to justify with a piece of paper or why this is damaging to them in the long term, short term, medium term. Just believe in whatever they say and everyone will be better for it. Another challenge, very shortly, is the fact that local regulations, and it's the same in the US, is extremely vague. So the employer is supposed to provide reasonable accommodation by the law. What does that mean? Like, this is so vague. This is creating a lot of discrepancies in how people interpret what it means. And the final challenge, I guess, is going to be around performance management, where you have people who find in their performance reviews neurodivergent traits, right? So if you say to someone with ADHD that they have to be better at prioritizing, how is that helpful? You know, like, this is not a performance issue. It's probably the way the KPIs are being delivered or the objectives and key results are being formulated. So again, it's not on the burden of the person who's neurodivergent to explain, I need to have my performance managed differently. It's the company around these people, the disabled folks and neurodivergent people, who have to be supported by the company that they work for. So this is a little bit about the challenges.
Thank you for that. It's a lot of good stuff. Follow-up question for you, Aurelia. Can you tell us a bit more about your work at Google Ireland and share an example of any successful initiatives? You've shared some interesting news, by the way, about new spaces and new things happening in your part of the world. So I'd be curious if you wanted to speak on any of those things.
Yes, I would love to. Thank you. So, as I said, I work in the Dublin office. You may have noticed from my accent that I'm in fact not Irish. I'm originally from France, but I've lived in a bunch of different countries, which also have helped me maybe understand how cultural impact can play into neurodiversity, which I think is an interesting one. There's a lot of also sort of cultural flavor and color in how people who are neurodivergent are treated as well. So that's an interesting one, but I digress. So anyway, I cover Ireland. We also used to have an office in Cork, but now it's mainly in Dublin, so we have about 9,000 people there. So if about 15 to 20% of these people are neurodivergent, that's going to be a lot of people. Again, I said I have this calculator, so I cannot tell you what number that is. And so the scope that we have is sort of a pivotal role between HR, benefits team, accommodations team, external facing partners like Cambridge, for example, our clients, because I also work at Google Ads actually, and so I'm trying to create sustainable growth for companies in my day-to-day job. And so I also talk a lot about accessibility in this work. But mainly what we do is talk to our ERG members, so the employee resource groups that we have within Google, where we have a group for literally everyone that exists on this earth. You know, we have a lot of disability groups, of course, like people who are deaf or blind, low vision, people who have chronic illnesses. And in our neurodiversity group, we actually included a lot of different disabilities because we include mood disorders, so schizophrenia or bipolar, or maybe temporary disability like depression as well. So these folks who are, some of the time don't really have a platform as well to be supported, we try to widen that umbrella as well. And so in terms of successes, I think we've had a great one recently, and I'm glad to see that some of you are wearing the lanyard as well. So some of you may know about the sunflower lanyard. Thank you. This event should be sponsored by you, by the way. Google Ireland is going to become a corporate sponsor of the sunflower lanyard, the hidden disability scheme. For some of you who don't know this, it's vastly used in airports, so you can use the disabled lane and use priority sort of passages. I know that this has saved my life numerous times, especially in large airports like Stansted or Charles de Gaulle in France. Even in Dublin, it's also recognized. And so we are going to become a corporate sponsor in Ireland, which means that we will have our facility people sort of trained to recognize what it means, so they can support people without having them reaching out. Again, it's part of this concept that it's not the burden of the person who is disabled to constantly have to reach out and say, I need help, I need support, please do something. You know, it's going to be about the people around this person saying, hey, I have this available, would you like to avail of it? Hey, I have this quiet room, can I take you to this room, you know? And this has worked for us in the past in some events. So now we're becoming a sponsor, which means we're going to implement it internally in all of our events, but also externally for all of our partners coming as well. So all of our clients, again, Dublin is an extremely large office because it's an EMEA headquarter for our ads product as well. So we're hoping that it's going to catch and more people will join. As far as I've been made aware of, PayPal and Microsoft are also on the list to join. So yeah, tell your friends if they work in corporates that they can join this scheme. But I'm sure this is going to be a great success.
Thank you, Aurelia. All this I didn't know you were French. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to turn it over to Angus, our second Google panelist. We were followed by Ellen Hannon, so you'll be next on the list. So Angus, tell us a little bit more. Thank you for your introduction. What misconceptions have you encountered about neurodiversity in a professional setting, and how has Google addressed those? Share a little bit about that.
Thank you, Tyler. I think that personally, over the years, I've noticed there's a lot of misconceptions in general with neurodiversity. And a lot of it stems from the unknown. Individuals who do not understand it as a condition, and therefore automatically view it as a problem to fix rather than an opportunity to discover. And I think that is one thing that, as we move forward and as it becomes more visible and as there's more voices talking about it, we'll see this change, we'll see these things evolving over time. When we talked about, it was touched on about AI as a solution moving forward. AI feeds off information that's fed into it. So the more voices, the more information it gets, the more advanced AI solutions will become as a whole, and more opportunity to support individuals with neurodiversity. But the new ways of thinking with neurodiversity are there really to help foster, create, innovate, not seen as abnormal, which I think, from my personal experience, I think the legacy schooling system was very much focused down a strict way, which doesn't necessarily support individuals with neurodiversity. So it was only really when I went into a corporate type of environment, especially more recently probably Google, 6.5 years ago, that I was able to kind of really bring myself into that space and bring this kind of opportunities around. Great. And the reason why I think Google is slightly different to other businesses I've worked for is because it is a very fluid, very organic environment. They use the term thriving in ambiguity, which I think is code for anything they want it to kind of be. But it does resonate in terms of things will never stand still. And I think some people who are very structured in terms of how they are orientated will struggle in that type of environment, where I think people with neurodiversity, it almost can play to your strength as long as individuals know their strengths and able to recognize their strengths and use those to the advantage that you can do to bringing that to life. I mean, I struggled in terms of previously working in financial services sector. I spent most of my career kind of masking who I really was, to be brutally honest. It wasn't great. I didn't enjoy it. And I kind of constantly lived in a fear of, say, the appraisal time, end of the year, what are you going to say? So I think only now I am in Google, it's really allowed me to be myself and play to the strengths, because fundamentally we're focusing on innovation. And to innovate, you have to think differently. You can't follow the standard patterns as have been tried and tested year upon year. Something new has to come. And new ways of thinking is the only way new ideas are going to come.
Do you have any specific examples, any memories of the time that you, your organization, or organizations has done something differently when it comes to, that you wish had been done differently in terms of empowering neurodiversity? Anything that you wish could be done differently? Anything that was kind of a learning experience?
Yes, thank you. Great question. I mentioned earlier about hiding effectively, masking, is the term used. And I did that a large part of my early part of my career in financial services where it was very structured. And I wish if I could go back and talk to myself again, I think I would have tried to encourage myself to be braver, to take that step out of a comfort zone, which I probably felt I was performing well enough, but not excelling. So I kind of drifted quite a period of time. I think it's only when you experiment and change and you look at different options out there, you suddenly see where you will fit. Where I consider myself exceptionally fortunate now, working in Google, in the business we do have, is it is a company that really fosters those ERGs, employment groups. And one of the things I like about employment groups, and any company can do this, and again I wish I could go back and tell myself to do this earlier, is there's no seniority level in an employment group. All you talk about is your experience. So you could talk to a vice president based over in the US or someone who's just started from graduate level or whatever it might be, you're all the same. There's no difference. And I think that is really important and very powerful to remember when you do think about it in a workspace type of environment. I think the other aspect is Google have recently invested a lot in what we call ADCs, so accessibility, disability centres. Is that right? Is that the right term? Discovery centres, sorry. So they've done a lot in regarding these ADC environments. And again, it is a space, a forum, similar size to this room, actually probably half the size of this room, where it is like-minded individuals come in and talk. And it's sharing experience, it's sharing ideas, understanding how people can help each other. And I think that is something is so valuable that goes under the radar in a lot of environments. And if I could go back, that would be the one thing I'd really try and push myself to be brave enough to take that step earlier.
Wonderful, thank you for sharing that. Okay, BBC folks, you ready? Tell us a little bit more about Enigma.
Lovely, thank you. I'm going to try and speak slowly, but I am from Liverpool, so bear with me. So Enigma is the BBC's Neurodiversity staff network, and it is actually a relatively new network. It probably took a little bit longer than we would have all liked to get it up and running, in all honesty. It took about 4 years of our co-chairs trying to advocate to get this network set up, and it was actually with the help of the ThinkLab and the research paper that Tyler spoke about earlier, that they were kind of armed to go to the board, the BBC, and present the case that this was a really important topic and it was going to help a lot of people and there was a business need for this. And so we officially launched in March of 2023, and since then we've very, very quickly risen to 800 plus members. And again, just kind of reaffirming the kind of need for a network about neurodiversity in the business. And what I think is really, really brilliant about Enigma is that it champions the strengths of neurodiversity. So it focuses on the value that being neurodiverse brings to an organisation. There's been a research study that 60% of teams are more productive if they've got ND people working in that team. And so we really wanted to kind of lean into that and say, actually, yes, there's challenges, but look at what we can do and look at the power of thinking differently if we all come together. And I think in companies, like Google, like BBC, as Angus spoke about earlier, where they are so focused on innovation and driving businesses forward. They want to be at the forefront, and I don't think you can do that without all of us. What the network does is essentially it exists to foster an incredible community of like-minded people. We advocate for ND across the business, and we are very, very much invested in and driving D&I initiatives we've released a lot of papers, resources across the business, such as a ND hiring toolkit and a manager's toolkit as well. And we've recently introduced the first of its kind at the BBC, that an online training for managers who are line managers of people who have a neurodiversity. And obviously the next step for that is to make it mandatory. That's the dream world. But we're really, really happy with kind of the uptake that we've seen already. We also work in a consultancy, how do I say that? Consultancy capacity. So we work with our production units, and I don't know if anybody who's have seen the BBC series Inside Our Autistic Minds. It's a great watch. If you haven't seen it, do go and watch it. And we worked in a consultancy mandatory with, what's going on today? How do you say that word? Consultancy manner, thank you, with the production team to help them kind of work their current practices to make them more ND friendly for their autistic contributors. We developed neurodiverse friendly task sheets. We made sure that people, the ND contributors, knew who were coming into their house to film in advance, so that they knew what to expect when they came through the door. And all of these practices that we introduced have now actually been rolled out across all of our production units, because actually people went, oh, that casting sheet's a million times easier to read than the one that we've all been using for years. And so we do a lot, and it's early days, but our ambition is to just keep going and keep raising the profile across the business.
Thank you. Congratulations on 800.
Thank you.
It was 500 not that long ago, so that happened quickly. But you get to 1,000, let's do a cake.
Maybe do a
People,
party.
yeah. People like cakes and parties in this country. Follow-up question for you, based on your personal experience learning about kind of your own journey of self-discovery. How has that shaped the work, the advocacy work that you're doing as part of the Enigma steering group?
Yeah. So when I joined the Enigma steering group, my kind of confidence in my ND was really, really low. I was masking. I was not, insecure. I didn't really tell anybody other than my line manager, and that was purely because I felt obligated to. And then when I found Enigma, I found a community of like-minded people with shared experiences, shared understanding, and that was for the first time. So I mentioned earlier that I was diagnosed in my second year of A-level. So I'd gone through all of school not knowing, because you always know, don't you, but not fully understanding. And so I worked forever to try and keep up with the same standards of everybody else. I was working 10 times harder, but meanwhile always being pulled out to go to special school. And when I found out, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. But I think this idea of kind of you need to work so much harder to keep up, because otherwise they're going to catch you out, that had already been instilled in me. There were, so I carried that into my working life, and I guess it's kind of the embarrassment that you felt in school when you got told to read out loud or to announce your spelling test result, when I was always getting 2 out of 10, so I never really wanted to tell anybody that. I think it's that embarrassment that now kind of resonates as fear in the workplace, and it manifests itself in the forms of imposter syndrome and anxiety. And it took a long time for me to build the confidence to be able to say, actually, no, I'm dyslexic, and that's why there's a spelling mistake in that, and it's not the end of the world, and we can fix it. And just having more ownership, and that self-acceptance was discovered through Enigma. That ability to see myself in other people and not feel like I'm the only person that's going to get pulled out of the class, because I'm different. That was eye-opening, and since then it's just been an upward upward positive trajectory. It's just been positive since, and I think it is that kind of group mentorship you know, Enigma, we have 800 people. We have a community that uplifts people, that is constantly providing tricks and tips, sharing knowledge, educating each other on our own ND conditions. And I think, yeah, it's just a really special place to kind of build each other up and recognise how important thinking differently is and the value in that. Thanks.
Speaking of tips and tricks, can I ask you one more question, if you don't mind, I'll go to someone else. So speaking of tips and things like that, and this has come up a little bit talking about workplace recruitment, navigating all of these things. Any tips for neurodivergent individuals about the job interviewing process, the hiring process, or anything that you want to share with anyone here today?
Yeah. So I think with recruitment, it kind of starts at application stage. So it's when you have to tick kind of the dreaded box of, do you consider yourself to have a disability? And for me personally, you know, I recognise that my ND has challenges, but I also think it has a lot of strengths. And so I don't personally identify as being disabled, and I know a lot of people do consider their ND to be a disability. That is a personal choice. But I've always felt like a little bit of a fraud ticking the box. I'd much rather tick a box that says, are you neurodiverse? I'd be like, triple check, yes I am. So, just checking my notes of where I want to. But yeah, I think that's step one, and actually there's a lot of trust involved in ticking that box, and it's, do you trust the organisation? And that changes from business to business. And when I was applying for the BBC, I did actually reluctantly tick the box, and I did that because I wanted them, I felt like it was an easy way for me to kind of put my hand up and make it a consideration. And the reason for doing that was because I'd applied for a job not that long before at a similar ilk of company, and I'd had handouts for my assessors, and I didn't get the job. And I asked for feedback, and they said it was between me and one other person. And even though I'd gone above and beyond, and I had all of these documents that said, look, I can do the job, I had spelling mistakes. I know, classic. So I wanted to be transparent when I got to the BBC, and I thought, you know, they asked me what my weakness was, and I said, I can't spell, I'm dyslexic, and I got the job. So actually, I think it's very important to take ownership and to be transparent and to have that self-acceptance, because at the end of the day, this is who we are. Like, we actually can't change it. Yes, it has challenges. Those challenges can be mitigated. And I just feel that, like, ever since I've had this self-acceptance, it's got easier. People have listened, they've accepted it, they've not pulled me out on my spelling mistakes because they know why they're there. And it just makes that conversation so much easier. So yeah, I think definitely be as transparent as you feel comfortable being. I think in my experience it's definitely helped. I think the system itself in terms of recruitment is by no means built for an ND person. So you take it into your own hands. You know, if you're confident enough to say, I need help, tell them what help you need. You know, if you don't ask, you don't get. And I know it shouldn't be that way. I know it should be built for us, and we should have on-site assessment to see if we can do the job. We shouldn't be doing a recall memory test and an interview. But the organisations aren't there yet. So take it into your own hands, try and take as much control as you have and put yourself in that best position. Because also, if you've been brave enough to tick that box and the organisation then doesn't offer you reasonable adjustments, or it doesn't give you your needs, it doesn't consider your needs, or it makes the process complex, I would be asking myself if they were the right company for me in the first place. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that, and that's
It's a lot.
yeah. But, this is the crux of what we're doing here together today, is sharing these sort of things, talking about it, seeing are there things that we can kind of share together that makes things just a teeny bit easier for everyone. So Yeah, thank you for that. Hannah, you ready?
Yeah.
In terms of, let me also mention too that all the things that you're talking about with organizations and things, it's nice. Things are changing. Like even like with our own experience with ThinkLab and Aviva, we're able, to their credit, once they kind of came on board, we're able to push back and question is like, why are you asking this question? Like, what purpose does this thing have during the course of the job? They actually was like, oh yeah, right. It was like, it's just standard that we do. It was like, but why? So they were good about that. So like, that's starting to happen a little bit more here and there. It's gonna be a while, but that's encouraging. So, yeah, Hannah, as you're relatively new in this journey about your self-discovery and anything about barriers, like, what have you learned, encountered so far in the workplace and these sort of things? Anything you would like to share and talk about further?
Yeah, sure. And also, just to point out, I'm on medication that makes my mouth really dry, and this is my second week and my first speaking opportunity with them. So if I have to take a break and have some water, then excuse me. But it's it's a good experience. I feel like a walking experiment with ADHD medication. It's always never a dull day. So yeah, I mean, obviously having ADHD, there's some key barriers which are really not conducive to any form of working environment and just generally working. Motivation is a big one. And obviously getting into a workforce when you're going into kind of early entry-level jobs, there tends to be quite a lot of admin, quite a lot of repetitive work, at least within the industries that I was trying to get into. I am driven by purpose, and again, trying to find a job that was purpose-driven within the economy 10 years ago, and I can imagine now, even more so, would be really difficult. I also had quite a few good opportunities that I could have chased and maybe could have been a bit more kind of proactive and tenacious about, but again, my mind being the way it was, that was a real challenge for me, and it's something that I kind of let slip. Once I was in work, I struggled with organisation, with memory, deadlines, finishing projects, which is always a fun one. There's many projects on my table at any one time, and not many of them get fully finished, which obviously isn't particularly conducive to succeeding at work or progressing. And that often led to me getting bored within roles and leaving. Obviously, spaghetti careers, squiggly careers are very much a thing now, but I was also raised by two medics who started at one level and then worked their way up over 40 years. So career was kind of the concept for me, and I never understood why I couldn't stay in an organisation and progress and work my way up, given I didn't understand how my mind worked. All of that led to mental health issues, as I'm sure you can imagine. So I was diagnosed with depression about a year into my working life. I had a lot of self-worth issues as well. And I was when I was growing up, I was told I was lazy, attention to detail, lack of motivation, etc. And I never really believed it because I knew I was working really hard. I knew I was trying my hardest. But obviously, when you are in a new situation, those thoughts do start to kind of creep in, and you start to think, oh, maybe they were right. Maybe I was wrong this whole time, and all those people who didn't know how hard I was working on my experience, maybe they were right. And actually, really interestingly, when you go through an ADHD diagnosis, they ask you for your school reports if you have them. And my mum is a hoarder, so we had all of them. And it was an amazing experience reading through them because every single page, including PE, including the sport page, had a sign that I had ADHD, and obviously, being misunderstood in girls especially, and obviously just not something that people were looking out for. Because I was succeeding, I wasn't flunking at school, I wasn't failing, I wasn't, So, it was just kind of operating in that middle ground where I was getting by, but working really hard. And Elle and I were discussing the very obvious analogy about a duck swimming, and they look really peaceful, but their feet are going and that was kind of like life. And of course, there's imposter syndrome as well, like Elle was saying. All of that kind of leads to that within the workplace, which is really struggle. I found my way in the workforce, and kind of without knowing it, found jobs that worked really well for me. And in my last job, when I was diagnosed with ADHD, I spoke to a manager and I said that these are the things I struggle with at work. And she didn't mean to say anything harsh, I know she didn't mean this, but she said, I hate to say it, but everything that you describe that you struggle with is everything you're expected to do in your job. And I said, I know, and that's why I've been struggling. And when she said that, that's when I realised that, at what cost have I been working, and no one's realised that there's anything wrong because I'm still succeeding, but at what cost to me, at what cost to my physical and mental health. And that's kind of when it all clicked for me that, having this diagnosis and having this understanding of my mind has really changed my life and changed my career, my personal life too, but definitely within the workplace. And it's kind of kick-started that journey to be a lot kinder to myself and the kind of self-worth experience that I've had since. Do you want to talk about mitigation as well?
Yes, please.
So, much kinder to myself is a big thing, and it sounds so simple, right? It sounds like, oh cool, you're just much kinder to yourself. But there was one time I was about to join a meeting. I think I had 3 minutes before a remote meeting. I went to make myself a coffee. I realised I'd started cooking breakfast on the pan. I then started repotting a plant, and it's not like I blacked out, but you kind of black out a little bit, and it kind of came to. And my kitchen has 4 surfaces, so each of these tasks have been started on each surface around me. And I did a little rotation round, and like before my diagnosis of ADHD, I think I would have been like, why am I like this? Really like the self-worth. Why am I like this? Why has this happened? And with the ADHD diagnosis, I just burst out laughing. Like, probably a little manic laugh. I think my lodger was a little bit worried for me. But that kind of difference in my mindset and being in that experience a year earlier would have just been so different. So that's been a real thing for me. Opening up about it and talking about it has made a big difference to me. And I know everyone keeps talking about it, and it's difficult. It's really hard. It's trust, like I was saying. There's a big trust exercise in doing that. But as Aurelia was saying, we're starting to go from awareness and acceptance to celebration. And we celebrated Neurodiversity Celebration Week in work rather than awareness. And that's a really nice shift because this makes me who I am. It makes me really good at the job I do now, which is pure chaos, and I thrive because I am asked to do 10 things at once. And I was already doing that, so great that you're asking me to do that now. Also access to work as well was a real thing for me. So getting coaching was really helpful in my journey, in my self-discovery, and having that support from someone who coaches other people and can share other people's experiences. Technology as well, so getting access to certain tech. Some was prescribed to me via access to work, and it kind of worked, but kind of didn't. So it's finding stuff that works for you specifically. Some tools already exist in Word and things that you have access to, so kind of finding that, discovering those kind of tools. And the community of Enigma as well has really, really helped me and kind of mitigate some of those barriers and kind of find ways that work for me. And it changes all the time too. That's the joy of ADHD.
Thank you for that. One more question?
Yeah.
Well, also, how are you doing on water?
Yeah.
Okay, that was the question. That was a question, not the question. A lot of great specifics and examples that you just shared right now. Any tips or advice for anyone with us today or listening online later who might be just starting on kind of like, starting this, what to do about neurodiversity in the workplace? How do we navigate? Where do we even begin? Like, what are some of the first things? Any tips on that?
We've had some really good examples of it in the room already, but taking time to really understand what you need as an individual is obviously really important, and also what you struggle with. We all are going to have different experiences, we're all going to have different needs regardless of if we have similar neurodiversity conditions, and so that's really important to understand the baseline. Also thinking about what your the environment you're in can do, so whether that's in university or in a business or in a team, what could they do in an ideal world, and trying to meet in the middle, because I'm sure most places that we operate at this moment in time will not be able to kind of tick every box, but the ideal world scenario, really thinking about that. Know your rights is obviously really important as well, and what's available to you. So the tech I was just referring to, I didn't really even think about what technology I already had access to, what tools, even things like being able to dictate on word and kind of record meetings and being able to kind of get notes like that, those tiny little things which were already there, which I could just access. So that was really, really useful for me. The being kind is I'm going to say it a lot, but it does come back to it. It does have quite big consequences coming to terms with your neurodiversity. There's obviously times where you may grieve or kind of regret just like situations in your past once you start reflecting on them about what could have been different and things that might have gone wrong, and you can really get into that cycle of things, and almost like I sometimes felt a bit betrayed by my brain and my body, and like feeling like I was being driven by something that's not within my control, and that was really difficult for me. So kind of coming to terms with that and giving yourself time to come to terms with that is really important too, and then trying to focus on the positives and the learnings from that is really, really good. Yeah, talking to people. Some people won't get it. My mum doesn't get it. There is a thing on Instagram, hello Instagram again, but there is a thing that says the person in your family who denies that you have neurodiversity is the one that gave it to you. My parents aren't together, and I screenshotted it and sent it to my dad. I sent it to my mum and had a very different reaction. But yeah, you know, I grew up in a household where the way that we behaved was normal, so that's normal. We don't have ADHD. And yeah, that's been an interesting experience going through it with my mum. And there will be people who don't understand it, and that's on them, it's not on you, and you will have tried your hardest, and it can be really difficult to have that experience. But for that one person that denies it, there will be 5 people who try and understand it or accept it and celebrate it. So take those risks and advocate for yourself, and yeah, try and find the positives. I think it's really important.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that and all the things that we've been talking about so far. Rich content for discussion for after we take a lunch break. It looks like we're going to go a little over if people are okay, if you need to leave at 12:15, but we're not going to shortchange lunch break, so we'll take the time from somewhere else. So we'll get an hour once we're ready to go. We'll sort it out. But anyways, like for discussion group, we'd love to hear more about this. Like keep these things going, different topics and things like that. So more on workplace. Deborah, can I ask you in terms of like, tell us a little bit more about Neurobox, and tell us a little bit more about the work that you do for empowering individuals, for advocacy, how they can thrive in the workplace and things like that.
Thank you. So Neurobox, we are a workplace adjustment provider, so we specialise in supporting organisations and individuals with disability and neuroinclusion in the workplace. We do this through, I guess, 3 strands, if you like. So we work with individuals with strategy coaching, with workplace needs assessments, and also with assistive technology. We work with teams and managers in terms of manager training and coaching, and also teams, colleagues, awareness, acceptance building, training. We also work with organisations as a whole in terms of systemic change, so looking at audits, policy development work, disability confidence, and such like. Part of my role is to work with HR organisations and DE&I professionals on their journey in terms of the service that we deliver. I also work to develop our research strategies, so we work with a number of external research partners at various universities. So we're currently engaged with the Digital Futures at Work Research Centre, which is a collaboration between the University of Sussex and Coventry, and that's been a piece of research looking specifically at remote working for the neurodivergent community. We're just about to start a project looking particularly at inclusive recruitment methods, particularly around psychometric testing and situational judgment tests. I've got currently a research project, an in-house research project that I'm about to start looking particularly at autism and the perimenopause in the workplace as well. And then in terms of how we help employees to advocate for themselves, I think I'd say we do this through a number of ways, but I guess our kind of theoretical position is moving very much from a kind of, I guess, disclosure model to much more of a self-advocacy model within the workplace. And so we do this through, I guess, several ways. So one would be we have a service called strategy coaching, which was alluded to, I believe, earlier. So this is something that can be provided as an adjustment or a support service via Access to Work or via your company, depending on the funding model. And this is a amazing, I don't want to say service, that sounds so kind of like dry and like, like when you go to the car wash and you get something, it's not service, but it comes under our services. But it is a space for coaching, not necessarily in the way you envisage coaching, which generally tends to be much more maybe performance development coaching, or I want to reach a kind of point in my career. This is much more around looking at strategies to support you in the workplace, supporting to develop those self-advocacy skills that then can be translated into the workplace and into those conversations. And also, it's really a space to process a potential with some diagnosis or identification. As we talked about, that can often be, well, it is a massive, a thing in your life, and there are a lot of emotions and feelings and memories that kind of need processing. And it's not counselling, it's not a therapeutic service, but it is a space that with a coach you can kind of explore. What does this identity mean for me? What are my strengths? What are my challenges? And what can I do about it? So what strategies can I put in place? So it also, of course, supports with confidence, with executive functioning skills, like memory, reading, and also, of course, presentation skills and that kind of thing. So it can kind of be as practical or as, I guess, theoretical, if you like, as you like, but it definitely has it's focused on the workplace and it's focused on practical strategies. For anyone that doesn't know about it, please come and talk to me afterwards. I'm an advocate of it myself, particularly when we're looking at this self-advocacy piece. It's a really powerful tool. And then I think another way that we help employees to advocate for themselves is actually to empower line managers. So line managers, we know, are at the forefront of those conversations, of the intersection, if you like, between me as the employee and the organisation. The line manager has to implement these policies. They are the kind of on-the-ground people, if you like. So it's really important that we don't kind of demonise them, because as we know, being a line manager is really hard. So how can we support line managers to facilitate those conversations, in a way that supports line managers and the employee, so that actually line managers can facilitate and support that self-advocacy process with that individual. The last thing, I guess, is around the question about how we help employees to advocate for their accommodations. And I guess what I would say is that we quite strongly believe that it's not necessarily up to the individual to advocate for their needs, but actually under a universal design model, it should be the organisation that is providing adjustments, inclusive practice, so that actually an employee doesn't need to advocate or say, I need this because. So I would give you an example. It might be that an organisation like the BBC has universal site license for a specific piece of technology, assistive technology. That might be Dragon, speech to text, or text help, text to speech, sorry, don't get this. But so the point being is that technology is already there, so it doesn't mean that an employee needs to go through that potentially arduous and emotional experience of disclosure in order to access that piece of technology. Yes.
Thank you for that. We talked about we shared success stories thus far. Anything, follow-up question for you based on that, in terms of any success stories that you could share based on your work or research that's kind of helped spark some positive change for organizations?
Thank you. So I'll talk a little bit about Cambridge Assessment, who you guys might know as being based in Cambridge. Previously, I think Cambridge University Press and Cambridge Assessment were separate, but they're now one entity. So we work with them very intently, and we've supported them to move from a adjustments via diagnosis model. So this is the model where I need a piece of paper that says I am dyslexic, autistic, in order to access adjustments. So moving from that model to one where you don't require that. So that entry barrier is effectively removed. And in terms of the practical, I guess, on the ground work that we do, so we provide Cambridge assessments with workplace needs assessments. They have an amazing health and safety department who do an amazing job, but workplace needs assessments, it's not a health and safety issue, and often in organisations it can be kind of subsumed into the health and safety section. So they have made that decision to bring in experts to support them with that, with those workplace needs assessments, as I said, based on, if you like, trust rather than diagnosis. And that is kind of across, if you like, the employee life cycle. So from the point of a new recruit, onboarding would be offered a workplace needs assessment through somebody that's returning to work after a period of absence. So that might be because of sickness, it might be because of maternity leave or bereavement leave, or any changes in our lives that happen quite regularly. So yeah, at any point, significant points in the life cycle. As I mentioned, we work with a number of organisations supplying universal site licences as well for assistive technology, so that an example of inclusive practice, as well as awareness of acceptance training being a core part of the, if you like, L&D, learning and development offering. I'm suddenly conscious that I talk quite fast, so sorry, I'll slow down. And then lastly, in terms of our research output, so with the Remote for All project, so this was a project that's been going for about 2.5 years now. We're in the dissemination phase, so the research itself is finished, and it was very much looking at the experience of neurodivergent employees who were working from home, either fully remote or hybrid, and it was also looking at the employer experience. So what was their experience of managing remote workers themselves. So one of the research partners along with us was Vodafone, and they have since implemented the recommendations from the research into their inclusion standards, and they continue to work with the research team with us to kind of with the on-the-ground staff. And that piece of research was recently presented to the Work and Pensions Select Committee only a month ago by my colleague at the University of Coventry, Dr. Christine Grant. It's available to watch online. So yeah, I can provide you with some further information if you'd like. And we've just received funding to develop a toolkit for line managers, looking particularly at remote working. And again, we're working with Vodafone and also NHS employers. And talking to the DWP to look at if they will host it, which would be useful as well. So yeah, that's just a quick overview.
Thank you.
Final panelist, Jemima. First of all, I can't see from my perspective over here. What is that big thing that you 3D printed?
This is Bob. This
Oh,
is
yeah.
my dragon.
Okay, now I see it.
Yeah. So we do the XW3D is one of our businesses that does flexi, tactile, fidget toys. Please do come, play, touch. We do dragons, we do fidgets. Yeah.
Great, okay. Speaking of businesses and things, let's talk about inclusive workspaces for you. In your role as an entrepreneur and business owner, what have you done in terms of any thoughts, reflections, share your experiences creating inclusive workspaces for those that you work with?
First thing I wanted to say about going,
She'll be back.
going, what was discussed about doing multiple things when you have a neurodiverse brain is that I'm currently going on side quests all the time, and it's like I've got to do this, this, and this, and my husband goes, "Are you having a side quest?" I'm like, no. So I took a thought from that, but I felt very seen with the mention of that. So, in regards to environments for neurodivergent individuals, I've been in business now for 8 years in October. I've been doing this for quite a while. And it's very interesting to really kind of mention about we're trying to fit in. We're always trying to fit in, we're being accommodating to the world. Well, it's really fascinating how the world should start to accommodate to us, so in our needs. And in business, and when you're running a business, you've got to do that. I have to do a business plan, I have to do forecasting, I have to do all this very neurotypical stuff. Why? Why am I fitting in with this? Why am I fitting into neurotypical terms when this is not working for me? My attitude to life in general in the last couple of years as I've got older, I've become more of I don't care what people think. I'm going to do things that work for me. Specifically, I have very much an attitude where I've been in business for a while. Well, I've done the neurotip. I will work with your environments and things, and I'll fit in with you. But I have recently adopted an attitude of, why the fudge should I do this? Why am I doing this? And I didn't see a place for me to be me in a business environment, a networking event, a community, a place where people could understand how my brain works. It's very difficult. So I went, okay, fudge it, I'll make one myself. I see an identity, an opportunity, very much like Time does, and ThinkLab does, is that what's the opportunity here? How can I help? Who else is doing this? Nobody. All right, I've got to do it. So within this, what I want to just kind of share with you is the inclusive environment. There are kind of 3 avenues. With the Neurospicy Entrepreneur Club, or NSEC as I'm referring to it, we have communication preferences. As you all have today, you all have bands. We've kind of evolved this over time, and I wanted to share with you is that when somebody comes to one of our communities, we have it very clearly on colours of what your preferences are. Initially, we started these with stickers. We got feedback, couldn't see the stickers. So we very recently changed to lanyards, for nice, brightly coloured lanyards. We're also taking consideration about colour blindness as well, can maybe see. So that's one way we accommodate as well. Other way is that, as Tyler's always alluded to, we have quiet spaces as well. So we facilitate somewhere that can be gone, can be quiet. And something I quite like doing, as you'll notice probably me doing this, I can't sit still, I want to do stuff. So something else we do within our groups is we have colouring sheets. So we'll encourage you to sit there and fiddle and colour and basically, you know, you don't have to be neurotypical, you can be you. So those are some of the things we've done with kind of our communication preferences and creating an environment which is welcoming and understanding to your needs that are not going to be neurotypical. Alongside that, we want to normalise the use of fidgets. It's been very much so the last couple of years when things like school and focusing, these are distracting. These are not going to help you. No, God, I cannot tell you how much I love sitting here doing this, and it helps me concentrate. So with that, we normalise the use of fidgets. Part of our community is with NSEC, XW3D, who's one of our other companies, sponsors our events. Everybody that comes to our event is given a fidget toy, given a choice to have one as part of their attendance ticket cost. So it's normalisation of these, making it an environment where it is normal to sit there. And I cannot tell you how pleasing and how heartwarming it is to sit in my community and while we're doing our events, to hear the clicky-clacky of 20 people sitting here, playing with a thing, being happy and focusing and having that facility. And the final thing is the kind of, as well within SEC, it's just a space to be you, it's a space to breathe out and be you. You've all sat here wonderfully, you're all there, but I really encourage you to stand up, fidget, move around, because we're in a space where you are not expected to be neurotypical. We're in a space where you want to be confident. So within our community, within SEC, those are things that we encourage. I'd also just like to talk about our other 2 companies. With the Wilcox Collective, we create visual content for businesses. Because I am dyslexic and my brain thinks differently, I want to visualize this as much as I possibly can. I want to be visual with the way that I do things. I will avoid text-based communication. I will do visual, and I will explain this to people, and that's where You know, we have part of our services, we have a studio in Cambridge for photography and videography. We'll do live viewing. We'll have our cameras set up to a laptop so we can check what's going on. At the end of a session, we do on-site selection, so you don't have to worry about later on coming back and forgetting what it was. But this is to encourage and to help, like everybody may have experienced in this room, executive dysfunction. I can't deal with this 2 days later. I'm going to deal with it now. So I'm going to overcome my executive dysfunction. And also just overwhelmed with all these things, and you know, you can't prioritise which is coming first. And part of our job and part of the collective's mission is to make the process a very streamlined, enjoyable one. Alongside that as well, I've had the pleasure to work with ThinkLab with doing all the videography for last year's hackathon. I very much remember working with Aurelia about making sure the environment was one that was conducive to her, that she was comfortable within, because I have that familiarity of understanding that I need to ensure the best opportunities to share these stories and these experiences are to make that person feel very comfortable. And then the final bit is kind of with XW3D, with our fidget toys. It is about validation. It's about somebody coming up to me. I cannot tell you, this weekend, I invite you all to join me, alongside next weekend too. We are going to be at Park Town and Country Fair with a 3D printing demo this weekend, selling our fidget toys on Parker's Piece. I cannot tell you how much joy and dopamine I get from somebody coming up to me, and you'll see if you do join us, how, and you can tell from what I'm wearing, how brightly coloured our stalls are and how we stand out. And the delight, the joy, the pure squee of somebody walking up to us and going, you, me, yes! It's heartwarming. And as you can tell, because we do a few different things, there's quite a thread of commonality between what we do, is raising awareness through our content and what we do of role models, of experiences in organisations, and championing those and raising those people up. With NSEC, it's providing neurodivergent individuals and their allies and their people around them a space to feel themselves, to feel welcome and to feel seen. And alongside with having fidget toys, having items that can promote and help the productivity, the best in us, to help us cope, to help us feel there, to help us be individuals that can be productive in society, and also normalise it as well.